So if so, this big shofar will arouse the essence of Judaism in every single Jew, including the religious Jews. But the religious Jews, it comes after they start to serve Hashem on Rosh Hashanah, and by the non-religious Jews, it comes beforehand. This big shofar will be sounded before. And eventually the big shofar will show everybody how far away they were from Hashem. That's what it means. Vaya, Bayom, ההוא, יתקע בשופר גדול. That's what this Mimor is talking about. On that day will be sounded a big shofar. Now, Rami said that the teaching from this is ביום ההוא, that on that day there will be sounded a big shofar. יתקע מעצמו. It'll be sounded on its own. He is that in the end of the time of Gullus, Shenisharu, that there are only just a few minutes Kodem before this big day, Shitaka b'shofar gadol, that there will be sounded this big shofar. And even more, that in regarding many topics, this has already begun. It has already begun the sounding of this big shofar. So I told you this Mimor was written after the 6-day war. The Rebbe said it's already begun in many ways. Kamuvan, like it's understood from what we said from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, that the inner desire of every Jew is to go out of the exile. And this big shofar will arouse this in every Jew. And this, the Rebbe says, we can see it starting to happen. But like I told you before, after the 6-day war and we had the wall, we conquered the Jerusalem, as non-religious Jews came flocking to the wall to put on tefillin for the first time. They came flocking. There were not enough Chabadniks to go. The Rebbe, by the way, started the whole tefillin campaign like a month or so, a couple months before the 6-day war. No one had any idea what he wanted. To go on the streets and ask Jews to put on tefillin, it was unheard of. Unheard of, especially in Israel, it was unheard of. Especially, I remember, it wasn't back then in the 6-day war, but I wasn't even religious then. But the 6-day war was in 1968. But I remember going out in the streets and asking people, like in the late 70s, that people would yell at you. Get away from me. Who needs you religious people? Go back to Poland. Go back to, really, seriously. People would yell. It was unheard of. Back then, it's unheard of. Nobody did it, right? And the Rebbe said that you put on tefillin, it'll give merit, especially the soldiers you should put on. And then all of a sudden there was the 6-day war, came the 6-day war. And as soon as it finished, all these Jews, it could have been all these Jews that yelled at the Chabadniks for asking them to put on tefillin. It could be those were the ones that went to the wall to put on tefillin. Right? I don't know. But certainly it roused everybody. The Rebbe went out, and in a one way, the shofar gadol, this really started when the boys went out on the streets and asked people to put on tefillin. That was already the shofar gadol. That was already the call from above. Put on tefillin. Excuse me, sir, would you like to put on tefillin? Slicha, Roni, botanech tefillin. I said, what, are you normal? Get away from me. This is the shofar gadol. This was the people who were lost. And when we won the war, 6-day war, as people flocked, there could have been all these people that yelled at the Chabadniks, get away from me, you go back to Poland. They were the ones who ran to, how do they say in English? Get lost. That's the Ovdim Be'eretz Ashur. Get lost. These people were saying, get lost, get out of here. Right, drop dead. Put on tefillin. What do you get out of there? Go back to the Middle Ages or something. And all of a sudden they saw the God of Israel. He was the one who really won the battle. He wasn't some old God that was just, sitting in the old folks' home up in heaven. Watch it with only for religious people or something. The God of Israel, he was the real warrior. He really cared for us. He really loved us. 6 days, we decimated the enemy. The whole world was shaking. That was like the shofar gadol. Ubefrat, and especially sheme'et kativat ha'maamar, especially now when I'm writing this maamar, ad achshav, until now, kavar avru kama v'kama shanim. There were many years that passed when the previous Rebbe wrote his Mamar, which is in 1943. Is now there's already gone many years. It's 15 years. Alachat kama v'kama, how much more so? Ha'acharon, the last, these last years, Sharo b'muchash, right now, the Rebbe is now referring to this 6-day war, that we saw clearly, kama v'kama, many Jews, shetchila, that in the beginning, matzav shel ovdim, there were many Jews that were totally lost, the nidachim and pushed away, Rahman Atzlan, God forbid. Pitom itoraru b'tshuva, they became pali tshuva by means of this big shofar. Big shofar, the Rebbe says here, yeah, he says this was aroused because of the 6-day war, right? Therefore, nowadays, for sure, we have to be in a way of bittul. Right? Those same Jews that 2 months ago, 3 months ago, were screaming at you, get away from me, leave this country, right? Go back to Russia, right? Drop dead, get lost. Those same Jews that not only were they far from Judaism, they hated it. Suddenly, after the 6-day war, they loved it. They were running down to the kotel and they were crying, right? Like I told you before, the paratroopers, tzanchanim, from the Shomer HaTzair, the communist kibbutzim, they were at the wall weeping. Hakara v'hargasha, and this feeling and awareness, that everything that we have done by means of our service of Hashem, whether regarding ourselves, whether regarding other people, this is, suddenly we realize it's all amazing kindness of God. That I did Torah and I did mitzvahs and I learned and I'm a genius. This is nothing to do with me. Hashem gave me power to do these things. Hashem gave me the gift. This feeling. Oh, this is very important. This humility doesn't mean that you're weak. This humility doesn't mean that you're ashamed and you say, who am I? Exactly the opposite. When you're not thinking about yourself, then you have power to do what Hashem wants. You're not worried about people laughing at you or scoffing. You know you're doing the right thing. You know that you're doing the right thing. Then the service, when you're not thinking about yourself, you're only thinking about what Hashem wants, and you realize that everything comes from Hashem, then you have more energy and more power. Sheba avodah shalo, that your service, kashura, avodah shalo kashura in mitziyuto, that when your service Hashem is only according to your abilities and your talents, havodah hi b'medira v'agbala, then whatever you do is limited and measured. You're not going to do anything crazy for Hashem. You're not going to go fighting any battles. You're not going to oppose the masses. Gam also kashavod shalohi ba'ofen de b'kol modecha. Even if your service Hashem is in a way of self-sacrifice, nevertheless, it's modecha. It's yourself that you're sacrificing. The sacrifice itself comes from you. It's according to your al yadei, and then when you do something, you give yourself tremendous credit for it. Al yadei hergish she'inyanim, by the feeling that when you feel that everything that you do by means of your service is not because of your own powers, but because of godliness. Right? I mean, just think about it for 1 second. Think about it. We're supposed to think that everything we do, everything we have belongs to Hashem. But when we do Torah v'mitzvahs, we say, no, that I'm doing that. So it ends up that doing Torah v'mitzvahs takes you further from Hashem. Right? You're saying, I'm doing Torah. I'm doing the commandments. I have a big merit. I'm putting on tefillin. I'm learning Torah. It could be better you didn't do Torah mitzvahs. Because we say that it's not so. It's better to do for the wrong reason. better than not to do it all. Sometimes it's better to do for the wrong reason, because eventually the godliness in the commandments and the godliness in your soul will connect, and it'll wake you up. You'll realize that really the fact that I did Torah and the commandments, it was a big miracle. By means of this, says the Rebbe, when a person realizes that everything comes from Hashem, then a person goes out of his own egotism, his own selfishness, and his own limitations, and his service of Hashem becomes above limit. Or in simple language, you're happy. A person becomes genuinely happy. If a person genuinely does not think about himself and he thinks about the Creator, then he's got in his mind something really infinitely good. If he's thinking about himself, no matter how good he is, it's limited. You know, I'm a nice guy and I'm very intelligent and I help everybody. And look, I built this big building over here and I made all these thousands of people do tshuva, but you're still thinking about yourself. If you think about, look how amazing Hashem is, He gave me this ability, He gave me this, then it's a whole different thing. Then you have what we call simply happiness. A person is positive. The things in the world don't have such a negative effect on you. Exactly the opposite. You have a positive effect on everything in the world. Hine, behold, Mavur, but my words explain, Yom Techilas Masecha, Bayom, Ahu, Yitaka B'Shofar Gadol, that this whole idea of the shofar of Rosh Hashanah, that even though that the main drawing down of the shofar is the screaming out of the inside of the heart, Avol, but Tzorichin Liot, let's not get too spiritual and too what essential and godly. You have to have a shofar. You have to have a physical shofar. Ki asiyahu la'ila. Because the main thing of all this is action, deed. That you can explain all these ideas and you're happy and you're rejoicing with Hashem. This is wonderful, but you have to actually do. In order that this revelation of Hashem, of the inner will of God, which that comes out to be what? Of this big shofar from above, in order that it should be drawn down physically in the physical world, we have to do physical things. So from this it's understood, the Kamo came that similarly, who benogea l'tikiyat shofar, of sounding the shofar, Gadol bayom ההוא. The same thing regarding the sounding of this big shofar. She'ein maspik, it's not enough. Yanim, the things which were up to now. True, we've put on tefillin on people, and true, there was the 6-day war, and true, people are waking up. But says the Rebbe, but it has to be a little bit more physical. Hatakiyat shofar gadol, the sounding of this big shofar that we're waiting for, has to be in such a way, shekol Yisrael, that every single Jew, gam v'kolel ha'ovdim, even those people who are lost, v'nidachin, and the people that have pushed themselves away from Hashem, and that the world has pushed them away from Hashem, pushed away. All these people, Yavo v'ishtachavu Hashem, they'll come and bow down to Hashem, Behar HaKodesh, on the holy mountain in Jerusalem. Why are they going to come to Jerusalem? What's the big deal of Jerusalem? Because there's going to be the third temple. The third temple is an essential ingredient. We learned about that, if you remember, in the previous Mimor, about the greater will be this last temple than the first temple. The main point of it is that Mashiach will come and he will build the third temple. It's not going to be built by people. Mashiach is going to do it. Whether Mashiach will do it, it's a whole, he'll encourage people to do it, but nevertheless, it's going to be Mashiach. Only Mashiach is going to build the third temple. But when he does, then that is the opportunity for Jews to really serve Hashem, because without the temple, you can't really serve Hashem. There's all these commandments you can't do. And the third temple is going to be in Jerusalem. Now, how are you going to get rid of this big mosque that's on the temple? How are you going to get rid of that? Mashiach is going to take care of that also. It says he's going to fight the battles of God. I don't think that it would be very difficult to imagine that the Arabs will simply take the thing apart themselves. It says that all of the non-Jews will realize that the religions were given to them by liars. That Muhammad and the Ashkelon and those people, they didn't know the truth. They were popular. They had a message that was really a very successful one, and it got a lot of attention and a lot of power and money, etc. Inspired a lot of people to make wars and to this, and also inspired people to do good things, to come close to God, not to kill, not to steal. That people had values and things, but nevertheless, it's lies. They're all lies. So therefore, it's not hard to believe that all the churches and the mosques, they'll be disassembled by the people who built them. That'll be in Jerusalem. Al Yadei Mashiach Tzidkenu, by means of the Mashiach. That Mashiach will be someone exactly like the Lubavitcher Rebbe. In my clear estimation, I mean, it is the Rebbe. We just have to do what the Rebbe says. Namely, listen to these Mimorim, get excited, do as much positive actions as we can, and convince other Jews also. This will all be by means of Mashiach, that he will cause this big shofar, and because of his work, will cause this big shofar to be sounded, and he will take us standing upright to our holy land. Ba'agala done quickly, Bakarav Mamash, speedily in our days. And tomorrow we'll learn a short sicha from the Rebbe